What's happening, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Crossed Up, Friday, July 5th, early in the morning, ahead of a three-game series between the Philadelphia Phillies and the Atlanta Braves. Anthony Sanfilippo is here. You can follow him on X/Twitter at @AntSanFilly. You can catch me at Bob_Wankel. Anthony, bring you in here. Pretty good week, I'd say, for the Phillies coming into this series at Wrigley Field. My mentality was basically this: just survive. Don't get swept. Don't let things snowball. If you can win the series, great. At no point did I ever think, as bad as the Cubs are, that the Phillies were going to go into Wrigley and sweep this week. And unfortunately, they missed an opportunity to do that yesterday. But still pretty good week overall for the Phillies, right?
Yeah, we said it on Monday, Bob. We came on the show and said, you'll settle for 2 and 4. You'll take 3 and 3 and 3 would be a win on this 6-game trip playing these two teams without, Schwarber and Harper and Real Muto still. And they got the 2 already, right? So now you're pretty much, it's gravy from here. Just get 1 in Atlanta and you come away with it like, okay, good. That's exactly what you needed to do. It helps a little bit that the Braves haven't been good lately. And so, here are the Phillies 9 games up going into this series against the Braves, which is fascinating. I mean, look, they're 4-2 without Schwarber and Harper. You can't ask for more. I mean, they're still playing .667 baseball without those two guys.
Do you think, for all the greedy people out there, because I know there's a lot of them, you were looking at yesterday and saying Tyone, Sanchez, like, this is a win. They're going to sweep them. Do you think if Schwarber and Harper are in the lineup, we're talking about 6-0 over their last 6? Because I think that they at least get the one against the Marlins on Saturday that they dropped.
Probably.
I'll say 5-1.
Yeah, they probably lose 1 still, right? But I think that they get 1. You're right. But yeah, I mean, you can't really complain too much about it. Look, Sanchez was off yesterday, and it was interesting because if you go back and watch his outing, like first inning, he was great, right? It was 8 pitches. He was out of the inning. Second inning, he starts to struggle a little bit, especially arm side, missing pitches away. Third inning, he kind of brought it back. And it's like, okay, so maybe that second inning was just an anomaly. He got through it, figured it out. Good on him. And then in the fourth inning, it just starts to snowball at that point. And it's like, okay, he doesn't have his stuff today. And after he gives up the home run, which, by the way, first home run he's given up since April, only the second home run he's given up all year.
Yeah.
You're thinking, all right, that they're going to have to make a little bit of a comeback here. And then Happ gets the second homer off Dominguez in the 5th inning after they pull. Like, I kind of thought that they would have pulled Sanchez after 4. He gives up the 5 runs in the 4th inning and be like, all right, look, just not your day. They were planning a pullback on him a little bit anyway. He wasn't going to go past 90 pitches in the game. So he was probably only going 5 innings, maybe 6, 5 2/3, whatever. So, all right, he had a rough inning. Just get him out and get to the bullpen. Maybe you don't have that blow up, that it blows the game away. In the 5th, he puts a couple more runners on. Dominguez gives up the homer to Happ, and then that's it. The game's over.
Yeah.
So, hey, those kinds of things happen. The offense wasn't good yesterday either. I mean, they scratched out 6 hits, I think it was in the game.
2 runs, 6 hits.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the first inning they had a nice Turner makes 1 run happen. Like, he gets a single, steals second, first stolen base since he came back. Right, first one he even tried, and then nice at bat by Brandon Marsh to get a single, and Turner scores on it from second. Play at the plate, but Turner's just such a good slider. He gets the first run, and then Castellanos hits a homer on a hanging breaking ball, and there, it's like
Castellanos 236, 690 OPS, creeping on up there. That's 700. It's in reach now.
He's going to get to 250. He's going to get there.
I told you on April 30th that Nick Castellanos would have a 700 plus OPS by the All-Star break.
Yeah, I know.
You would have said, damn.
I knew he was going to be better the second half. It's just, or I should say second half, after that first start. Like, the guy's just got to be better. You don't just fall off like that. Yeah. But still, and that was it. I mean, the offense, other than that, I mean, they had a couple of chances that could have put base runners on, but
you know who had a rough one yesterday? David Dahl.
He had a rough 2 games.
3 strikeouts. It's like he didn't see the ball that entire series.
Yeah,
his swings the entire time at Wrigley, it just didn't look right.
Yeah, he didn't see the ball well there. Who knows? Maybe it's just a weird field that way. I always wondered. I mean, I know that they don't really have a batter's eye. They have that section in center field where they don't have seats, but then they have fans above it. So, I just wonder if there's anything I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird. But he had a bad series.
Another big day from your guy, Johan Rojas, 0 for 3.
0 for 3.
Very good defensive play, though, on Wednesday night. Really saved some trouble. Look, when there's an opportunity to give a little round of applause, you got it.
It was a good play. I think they made too much of it, right? I mean,
maybe it was a situation where the jump was so good that he made it look much easier than it was.
Yeah, it was a good play. I mean, look, that's great. I mean, that's what you
look. I'm just trying to balance it out.
That's why he's here.
Yeah.
Right, to make plays like that, right? I mean, that's good. That's a good thing. That's a good play. And then Marchand had a good game the other night.
He did. Sure did.
Run, right? Yeah. Both him and Stubbs have done a nice job filling in for Real Muto. They really have. It's hard to complain about. We said the worst thing that could happen to this team is JT Real Muto gets hurt. Then he gets hurt, and it's like, oh shit, they're in trouble. And these guys have done a nice job filling in for him.
Well, look, man, I said this to you in a text message before. Maybe we talked about it very briefly on this show, but you look up this morning here, 87 games in now for the Phillies. Bryson Stott, 243, 690 OPS. Nick Castellanos, 236, 690 OPS.
Mm-hmm.
For all of this talk about Nick Castellanos and can you trade him and is it time to move on from him and how much longer can you do this? I realize one is a corner outfielder and the other one's a second baseman. And so that the offense isn't exactly apples to apples here and what you expect out of certain guys. I also recognize that Nick Castellanos is making $20 million a year to do damage in the middle of the order. And Bryson Stott's a young middle infielder who is still finding his way. But I think, is a different way of looking at what has happened this season with both players. And if they're in the same spot right now through 87 games, it's like, okay, have we at least cleared the hurdle of I don't need to hear about how Nick Castellanos stinks every time he goes 0 for 4. He's at least done enough right here where we're not asking these questions about how much longer can you do this? And this is embarrassing. And we're not doing that anymore, right?
No, the bigger question.
Can we put that to bed now?
I think so. And I'll be honest with you, to me, and I know he has an RBI hit yesterday, which is great. But to me, the bigger question is what's going on with Marsh. He hasn't started a game against a left-hander since April, I think it was, or whatever, beginning of May. And story came out this morning from the Athletic. Matt Gelb talked to Kevin Long, hitting coach, and he basically said he's not an option. Kevin Long, quote, he's not an option. It's not good. You can't have that be the case. That really tells you that not only do you need a platoon guy to platoon with him, but then you still need to resolve what's going on in center field. So we're looking at
it shouldn't be. I mean, let's be honest here. Everyone loves Brandon Marsh.
Yeah,
he's a great dude. He's a very good hitter against right-handed pitching. He's a good defensive left fielder. He's an adequate center fielder. He brings a lot to the table. But against left-handed pitching, to this point, I'm not going to talk about what he could be or what he will be because it's unfair to do that at the moment. But to this point in his career, he is a 0 against left-handed pitching. He just is. And you want him to figure it out. And, people say, well, their other options aren't that good. Why don't they just try, to give him more at-bats? The whole thing with Whit Merrifield, he needs more consistent at-bats. You need to give him more playing time. Let him string together 3-4 straight starts. Why isn't Brandon Marsh being afforded the same opportunity? I guess I get that argument, but then I just keep coming back to the fact that Brandon Marsh is 7 for 46 this season against left-handed pitching. And it's not just that he's hitting 150 against left-handed pitching. It's that he struck out in 25 of those at-bats.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, of the 46 at-bats he's had, 25 have ended in a strikeout.
So collectively, Merrifield and Pache, as bad as they've been, are better than Marsh. Marsh hits 152 against lefties. Merrifield and Pache hit 170. Marsh gets on base 226 against them. They get on base 250. The slugging, Marsh's slugging against lefties is 174.
Yeah.
Pache and Merrifield 250. So
he has one extra base hit and 46 at bats, and he has 51 total plate appearances. He's walked 5 times. So
yeah.
I mean, you think about that, and you look at the fact that he has 16 extra base hits and 165 at bats against right-handed pitching. He's slugging 485. He's got an 866 OPS against righties.
Yeah.
But I mean, he is borderline. He's borderline unplayable against left-handed pitching. And when you get into these games later in the season, or not even in a season, I mean, I guess when you get into the postseason, you almost have to be ready situationally to pluck Brandon Marsh out of a game if he starts against a right-hander.
Yeah, no,
you know what I mean? Like.
Absolutely, you're 100% right. I'm trying to find the quote.
Like envision this: it's 3-2 opponent in Game 2 of the NLDS, and the Phillies are trailing 3-2. They got runners on first and second, 2 outs. Brandon Marsh comes to the plate against a lefty.
Yeah,
you got to take him out of the game.
Yeah. So here's a couple of good quotes. I just want to give you a couple of the quotes from Kevin Long because I think they're pretty darn damning, right? And that's the thing. It's unbelievable. So he goes, here's the beginning of it. At this point, it's not even in the conversation. Really, he's not getting. I can't remember the last lefty game he started, so it's not in the picture right now. And it will be if we start feeling like his at bats are getting better against lefties. But that's really what it boils down to. And then he goes on to say, let me scroll down because then they talked to a couple other people. And he goes on to say he's probably been too passive against lefties. That's the thing I see. He's just not swinging enough. He's behind in the count a lot. He's giving them way too much credit. He needs to attack them instead of waiting for them to come to him. He needs to be ready to go. And then the last quote at the end of the story is, the question was, how can Marsh be a successful everyday player in the majors? And Kevin Long goes, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I just know that he's a good enough player and a good enough athlete that he should be able to handle it. And to this point, he hasn't. So we have to get better. That's damning stuff.
All of that is true. It's hard to argue with any of that. I think it's spot on analysis. It's fair. It's honest. Question I have for you is, are you surprised that what is to be gained by going to Matt and giving those quotes? Now, and here's my instant analysis. Do you think that there's any possibility that it's almost like, let's put Brandon on notice here? Like, we all like Brandon, but it's time to put a little heat on this guy. Like, there had to be a thought somewhere along the way that we know we have a good athlete here. We got a good player. He's got some deficiencies. He's going to evolve. He's going to mature. He's going to get better. And he's not. And so do you think that they're leaning on him a little bit publicly now to be like, yo, dude, like, come on, you're a little bit better than this. Like, let's grow up here.
Yeah, you're 26 years old now. Like, this is the year, like, this is supposed to click for you, right? And it's not. And they still have some runway. I mean, you could always say, all right, well, we'll push it to next year. We'll get it going again next year against lefties. But right now, we're trying to win a championship. We need to go out and get the bat that we need to go get to kind of make this team a championship contender. But the thing is it bothers you, Bob, because it was the same story after 22.
Yeah.
It was the same story after 23. And now here we are again in 24. And it's the same story. And it's not getting better.
It's just bizarre because, I think when we look at players, we take the zoomed out view, right?
Yeah.
The 10,000 foot view. And you look at Brandon Marsh and you go, I like this player.
Yeah.
He contributes. He can do things for you. So you feel, I would say that if you took the temperature of this fan base, most people would say, like, Brandon Marsh, good. I like Brandon Marsh. He's like one of my favorites, right? And so we tend to say, like, we like this guy, he is good, or we don't like this guy, he's not good. With Brandon Marsh, he's very unique in that in certain situations, he's a phenomenal player. And in certain situations, as Kevin Long basically said, he's unusable. He's not an option.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's not the first player that has drastic platoon splits, but it's weird to think about a guy that you kind of consider a core player being unusable in certain big spots. And they've probably now arrived there. The problem being is that, I mean, my shoulders moved when you said Christian Pache Whit Merrifield just now. Like, I went like, ooh, like, and if you're watching this on YouTube, my like shoulders went up to my ears. Like, it's bad. It's so bad. And then Johan Rojas offensively into the mix. And like, we talk about this a lot. I don't want to belabor the point and that it's a deficiency, but like, guess what, man? And we'll talk about the Braves series and where it's all at and how the Braves all of a sudden can't hit or haven't hit. And like, let's get to that in a minute. But like, it's been pretty much the same conversation from my point of view since March, which is like, it's about winning the World Series. So this is a good team. I'm not losing sleep over, at night over a bad series or a bad loss or anything like that. But what gets me is that you have 3 outfielders in Whit Merrifield, Christian Pache, and Johan Rojas, who left, right are borderline unplayable offensively. And then one of your dudes is unplayable against left-handed pitching. You have 4 outfielders right now that in certain situations are zeros offensively. You've got to fix it. You've got to fix it because you're going to get beat in the playoffs like this. You can't go into the playoffs with 3 holes in your lineup out of your outfield. You just can't do it. You can't do it.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, platoons can work. Like, there's no question. We've seen it.
Yeah, 93 fills, Izzy and Milt Thompson, and great. Inky, like, great, cool. Like,
not even here. I mean, we've seen it with other teams.
Platoons work.
Yeah, platoons. I mean, they worked with the Red Sox.
But I just feel like, me personally, yes, you're absolutely right. Good examples. I just think that if you're going to be serious about this, where this team is right now, you want to platoon one spot, fine. But you can't platoon left and then pray to God that your center fielder is going to hit a 9-hop with a shortstop and beat it out. Correct. You can't do both. You can't have a center fielder with an OPS at 560 and then run the risk of exposure in left field to that degree, to those extremes. We're not talking about Brandon Marsh hitting 227 against left-handed pitching. We're talking about Brandon Marsh not being able to put the ball in play.
Yeah.
You just can't have, you cannot do both.
So I think what the ultimate thing that we're getting to here, Bob, is, with the deadline coming up in 26 days now, it's got to be everyday outfielder and a right-handed platoon for left field.
Totally agree. I totally agree.
You need both. Those are priority 1 and 2, and then maybe an extra bullpen arm is your priority 3. But I think that's kind of the order that you got to be looking at for the deadline. And it's, what the most interesting thing to me with this whole thing is going to be, because we know it's coming. Like, Dombrowski's not going to sit on his hands. He's not. He's going to go get the players he needs to get, or he thinks he needs to get. But the interesting thing to me is the dynamic. How does this affect the dynamic of this clubhouse? Because the one thing that has been, and I wrote about this the other day, and I wanted to write that story because I felt that it was important, because it was, it's going to set up what's coming. Good
story. If you haven't read that story, Anthony wrote yesterday about how, as a whole, the bench and some of the depth pieces haven't performed particularly well. The statistics collectively are not good. But when you look and you kind of dive into each of those players, all of them to some extent have at least contributed to where they're at right now. And
contributed to
work it out game by game. And it's shown that even a Whit Merrifield, somebody that you're like, oh my goodness, how much longer can you do this? Like, there have been instances where Whit Merrifield's been pretty important to them. So,
yes.
It's a good story. It's worth checking out.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks, Bob. And so they contributed to those wins. And so there's a lot to that. When you build a team, the this group together, this collective, and they're all pulling on the same rope the way they are, and you have the best record in the sport, even the guys who aren't great that are contributing here and there, like, that matters, and it matters in that clubhouse, and they're really close, and they believe in each other. But now all of a sudden we're talking about changing over
3 of 26 roster spots.
Yeah, at least, right?
So let me give you the counter to this, right? Because the premise here is, part of what makes the Phillies good is this special dynamic that they have in the clubhouse. And some of that has to do with the fact that they are just good guys and that they get along well and that they've had success together. Rob sets a tone and they all buy in, and that's great. Some of it is the fact that they ran it back after just a dreadful disappointment last season against Arizona. Cool. Like, those those scars form, those battle wounds, and you move forward and you're united. And there is no doubt in my mind, I'm a believer in intangibles. I know a lot of people, as time is going on and more data is available to us, we tend to kind of discount and diminish those things. I believe in them. Here's my thing. If your clubhouse is so strong, and we talk about the leadership and the veteran leadership and Kyle Schwarber and great. If removing Christian Pache and or Whit Merrifield is going to break up the clubhouse dynamic and tamper with the chemistry so much so that it has an adverse impact beyond improving your team on paper, then that clubhouse to me isn't as strong as we're making it out to be. And in that case, I think we'd be giving it too much credit. I'll go a step further. I love Garrett Stubbs. I know you really love Garrett Stubbs. And I do think that too much has been made about a guy playing once every 10 days and struggling offensively. Now, he's been much better since JT Realmuto's gone down. But let's just say Garrett Stubbs hadn't gotten better. Let's say Garrett Stubbs right now is hitting 145, had made zero contributions whatsoever on the field, which we know is not true. If Marshawn came up here and was doing what he did, I'd think about it. We talk about like Chief Vibes Officer and Spotify playlists, and Garrett Stubbs is, I think, in my opinion, more than that. And I think it's almost unfair to him.
Yeah.
That we've made him into this mascot, and when I say we, I actually am not taking responsibility for this. I'm saying everyone else.
Yes.
Because I've always kind of been like, hey, I think that this guy actually has value. Like, we talked to him last year and you're doing the research, and I looked over to you and said, like, that this dude was like the best. He was the best catcher in the country when he was in college at USC. Like, people act like he's like a bat boy. He's not. That being said, like, if it got to a point where the other option was so far superior to Garrett Stubbs, I say you have to think about that. You have to think about it. Now, in my opinion, they're not going to move Garrett Stubbs. I think he's here for the remainder of the year. Now, I think next year you have something to think about.
Yeah.
But point being, Anthony, like, I hear you, and I get your story, and I thought the story was super insightful. And I'm not even saying that in the story you necessarily proposed this, but like, yeah, if you have to move on from 2 or 3 fringe pieces at the edge of your roster, and that's going to have irreparable harm, then this is all bogus. This is a storyline about the strength of this clubhouse that just isn't that true, in my opinion.
And I think that you nailed it, Bob. I think that you did. And that's the thing. And it's going to be tough. I mean, these are, and I ended the story with saying this. These are tough decisions that executives have to make on championship contending teams. Like, these guys have been contributors, but you need to get better if you want to win the championship. It's it. And it's not a knock on them. It's really not. It's just that, hey, you've contributed, but we need a little bit more.
Yeah. And in 2034, come on back and, clap it up for bench piece, 24th man on the roster. All right. Huzzah. Like that's great. Let's do it. But you're not going to get an opportunity to do that necessarily if you don't move on from that player.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way I look at it, it's like these things are all interconnected. Like, we keep talking about, well, Johan Rojas would be fine in center field if the other 8 guys were just mashing. I think that was an oversimplification from the start. I do. If the left fielder and the right fielder do what they're supposed to do, then Johan Rojas can hit 220. Like, no, come on, stop. But, like, I will say this. If one of these guys is gone, like, if you have to move on from Merrifield and or Pache and that hurts your feelings as a player, well, guess what? That's not on Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fuld. That's on you because you didn't take care of your business.
Yeah, agree.
So
agree. Yeah, and it's funny because we were actually texting about like things that make these guys, if they could just do this a little bit better, they could stay as the 25th, 26th guy. There's like one little thing or 2 little things. Like, if you just did this a little bit better, like let's look at Pache Rojas, for example. So One of the things I pointed out to you is that Pache, in 22% of his at-bats this year, has reached a full count. That's really good. I mean, you can find anybody who's up there that high. That's taking a lot of pitches and seeing a lot of pitches. That's great, right? He's even got 9 walks in those 22 plate appearances. Good, right? That's good work. He's got 2 hits, I think it is, in those 22 at bat. You're getting fastballs in 3-2 counts, and you're not making contact. You strike out 8 of them. That's where the deficiency is. Like, you got to make contact, dude. That's not there.
As unplayable as Brandon Marsh is against left-handed pitching, Christian Pache this season is hitting 172 with a 391 OPS against right-handed pitching. He does not have an extra base hit.
Right-handed or left-handed?
This is against right-handed pitching.
Well, yeah, he doesn't play against righties, though.
Right, he doesn't, right? But it has 29 at-bats. He doesn't have an extra base hit in 29 at-bats. He struck out in 12 of those 29 at-bats. But against lefties, and this is the problem, because you say, all right, well, you're not playing him against righties. No big deal. So then you have to have – this is the difference between Brandon – there are a lot of differences between Brandon Marsh and Christian Pache, but, like, here's the big difference. Brandon Marsh against right-handed pitching has an 866 OPS. He's dangerous. Christian Pache, okay, so you can't play him against righties, but against lefties this season, he is 11 for 57. He's hitting 193 with a 281 slugging percentage.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he has a 605 OPS against lefties. You have to do more damage than that.
Correct.
If Christian Pache was hitting 250 right now with an OPS in the high 600s, around 700 against lefties, I could make a case that despite being an imperfect player, there's enough there that he's useful to you in a platoon situation.
Yeah.
But as this thing goes on, and I've been like pro Pache over time, like it's the case is being built here as we speak as 100%. To why this guy probably is not going to be here come next month.
Yeah. And then if you look at a guy like Rojas, again, there are things that he does really well. The catch in center field is a great example. Once he gets, well, although he got picked off. Or got thrown out stealing, rather.
Just let it go ahead.
But even when
people listen to this, like, what is going on with these two and this guy? Like, did Anthony get snubbed by Johan Rojas on an interview? Like, what happened here?
No, but I don't know. But I actually like the guy. I really
do. You're calling it like you see it. I know.
Yeah, I just wish. But I mean, when he gets on base, does he create opportunity? Yes, he does. He put down a good bunt the other day.
He did.
Finally got one down. I was like, oh my God, he got a bunt down. It was great. But he needs to do that with consistency. And you talk about an approach at the plate where he has no idea what's coming. Yeah. Like that's the one thing that drives me nuts with the guy is he's just up there hacking at 2 strikes all the time. Pitch out of the zone. He's chasing it. He's not working walks. He's not working the count. And so like that bothers me. And I think like if he could just do that a little bit better, right? Do that. Be a little bit more patient, selective at the plate, put balls in play, be smarter on base, right? Then you're a valuable player hitting 230 in center field every day. I'm good with it. I'm fine with him batting ninth, playing every day if he did those small things better. And I think that's what the Phillies' frustration is with him because it's like we can use you. You just need to do the things where you have to think the game a little bit, and you're not thinking it.
Well, and again, like when you talk about platoon, and Johan Rojas has not really been a platoon guy. They don't really look at lefty righty with him. It feels like, and nor should they. But I mean, he's 10 for 51 against left-handed pitching this season with 1 extra base hit. I mean, against lefties, he actually is hitting 196 against lefties, 236 against righties. I don't know, man. He's got. Just like it's so bad. It's a 442 OPS against left-handed pitching this season.
Look, I don't want to.
It's just I
don't like to pile on but it's like he's hitting 230, whatever. It's like, when are they clean hits? Like I wish there was a breakdown of, and I know that they, you go to StatCast, you can do the hard hit rate and this and that, but I wish there was a breakdown of like clean hits and the lucky bounce hits that to go 20 feet and the third baseman can't throw you out because you're fast, kind of thing.
Whatever. I mean, certain players have made a living off of that. I mean, over time, I don't want to say there's a skill to it, but like credit to him for having the wheels and credit to him for finding the hard spot on the dirt. I don't know, but I don't think that you feel good. Like I know some people will say like you're talking about a guy who is hitting 226. He's not hitting 140. give him a little bit of a break. But I mean, if you've been watching this and you're being honest with yourself, this isn't like a 226 where you feel like he's on the verge of breakout. This is like a 226 where you're like, he was 1 for 4 last night with 2 strikeouts and hit a 9-hopper to shortstop and he beat it out. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you look and you were talking about StatCast and everything. I mean, you can just go ahead and take a look here, and there's a lot of blue, which isn't good. I mean, like hard hit percentage, if you believe in that, he's in the bottom 11% of the league. Chase percentage, bottom 14% of the league. Barrel percentage, bottom 8% of the league. Average exit velocity. His average exit velocity this season is 84.7 miles per hour. It's in the bottom 3% of the league.
84 points.
I mean, so it's pretty bad. You just look at the bigger metrics like batting run value.
Who's worse than that?
Yeah, like there are guys, but and as we talk, I could come back to this. I wasn't prepared for this conversation.
No, but that's, I mean, when you said 84.7, I was like, and it's bottom 3%. I'm like, there's worse.
Yeah.
Because exit velocity.
Here you go. I mean, I have it.
Yeah.
Jake Fraley, 83.7. Wilmer Flores, 83.8. Jose Caballero, Nick Senzel, he's having a Jake McCarthy, Charlie Blackmon. How about that? And then Michael Ciani of St. Louis. Those are your 7 guys that have a lower average exit velocity.
Jake McCarthy surprises me a little bit because his numbers aren't terrible.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like that one, and Blackmon, like you said, but I mean, he's at the end of the line. But
yeah, and then you have to go down this list before you start seeing some, like, believe it or not, Nolan Arenado is 14th, 85.1. Like,
he's not, yeah.
Bryson Stott is the next Philly on the list at 32. 86.4.
So the biggest gap between regular players, obviously, on the Phillies in exit velocity is you go from Rojas
84.7 to Stott, who's 86.4. So 1.7 miles per hour difference. And if you watch Bryson Stott this season, you've seen so many at bats where you're like,
yeah,
that ball is not hit very hard. So there you go. And I'm not telling you that average exit velocity is the end all be all.
It's not.
I think there's value in looking at it, but I'm not saying that it's the end all be all. But at some point when you're down there in those bottom 10 guys, generally speaking, that's not a place you want to be.
No,
that's not a place that you really want to be.
So I know I kind of sabotaged the conversation there with that, talking about those guys again. One thing I did want to bring up, we talked about very briefly at the beginning, with Sanchez not sharp yesterday. I go back, Bob, to last week. I forget what day it was. We were at the ballpark against the Marlins. I want to say it was the Saturday game. We're sitting in Rob's office before the game and talking about Sanchez and Suarez with their innings. We brought this up on the last episode. Is there a concern because these guys haven't thrown these many innings, right? And you talk about Mark Bowman writing about Ronaldo Lopez being gassed a little bit, right? I mean, so, these are things that teams are talking about and discussing. And then I hear Rob, say that yesterday was going to be a pullback game for Sanchez anyway. He was capped at 90. His pitch limit was going to be 90 for the game. Even if he was pitching well, he was going to be pulled after 90 pitches. And he then said after the game that he's giving him an extra off day going into next week before he pitches again. Then you have the All-Star break. So they're building in some rest here for him. Does it concern you at all that they're thinking this way with these guys? That like, like we need to really start to pull back on them a little bit as we approach the second half of the year and postseason?
I don't know if it concerns me that much, but with Cristopher Sanchez specifically, I mean, the conversation about him was that he's going to give you quality starts, maybe not by definition, because the whole idea was, well, maybe he gives you those 5 innings of 1-2 runs.
Yeah.
Well, he's been more than that this year. It's been 6. It's been 7. It's been complete game most recently.
Yeah.
And over time, I think you look up like start to start, you go, okay, this makes sense. He was good in this start. But then you look up all of a sudden and you're in the beginning of July and you go, damn, he's thrown more than we had expected. And we know that the sport now is kind of built this way where they're looking at all of this and they have a roadmap for each individual pitcher and what is the ideal workload and how do we keep them fresh. And when you're the Phillies with bigger considerations in a few months from now, I actually have no problem with it. I think I'd rather them take this approach because there is a world where he is going to get burnout, that maybe he does fall off a cliff if they keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So I'm not, at the very least, I'm not surprised to hear that. I'm not. We talked about the start yesterday, and I talked about the Cubs. They have not been swept in a series of at least 3 games this season, which I found surprising because the Cubs stink. Like it's very clear that team is not very good, and they got off to an okay start, but they've been about as bad as anybody since the middle of May. But I sent this to you before the game yesterday about like how they have been so bad against left-handed pitching over the last month and a half or so. And I mean, they got on him yesterday. He was not, I don't think he was as bad as the end result suggests, but he was not good. He was not sharp. So I do think that you start to just take a look at some of the warning signs and you try to be proactive in, mitigating that impact of him throwing more than they had expected. You cannot tell me that they expected this workload from him to this point this season, just in terms of volume of innings. Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think it's anything that we throw up major red flags, right? And say, here we are. We're going to run into this, he's going to run into this problem all of a sudden. But I do look at it and say, if they're starting to manage it now, what's it going to be like in August and September?
Well, I think the bigger question is, or the more interesting part of this is, unless you think Taijuan Walker is going to come back and be suitable, and then you have Michael Mercado, who, like, if you thought, oh, okay, there's something here. I thought he did a nice job. I know we haven't talked about him. I thought he did a nice job, and he worked, he limited damage. He gave up some hard contact the other night. He was able to kind of work around it. So I'm not ready to say, like, wow, Michael Mercado, like, go ahead. You're the number 5 starter. But I think there were some positives there too.
Yeah, it'll be a difference when he faces a Braves lineup versus the
right. But I say all this to kind of now point out, like, okay, so you want to be cautious with Cristopher Sanchez. I think you have to be somewhat cautious even with a Ranger Suarez, who's going to sail past his biggest workload to date. Zach Wheeler is not 26 years old. You don't know about Mercado. You're not sure what you're going to get from Taijuan Walker. Spencer Turnbull is not going to be here until, mid-August, it looks like. Nick Abel is not that guy, or has not proven that he can be a guy that you would see here this year. All of this is to say, if you want to take a really conservative approach with your pitching staff, you're probably going to have to go out and trade for another starting pitcher.
Well, you could. And that becomes the.
I know we talked a little bit about that earlier in the week, so I don't want to just recycle the same topic, but you bringing that up, that's the first thing I think. Like, you might need another arm.
It becomes a fourth need. It's crazy. So it's funny that I'm glad you got back to the trade discussion there, because I wanted to bring up a name that we just saw as it relates to, does this interest you at all for the Phillies? And then I'll tell you my thought on it. Cody Bellinger.
Oh, Belly.
Interest you at all?
The Cubs
are going to trade him. I think they're going to trade him this year at the deadline.
I
know he's left-handed. Doesn't help with a platoon possibility, with Marsh. But
well, I mean, you talk about Cody Bellinger and what he's done this season. Go look at his splits. He's been better against left-handed pitching than he's been against right-handed pitching.
Yeah.
So problem solved. I mean, here you go. He's hitting .341 against lefties this season.
Yes, he is.
91 at bats, .813 OPS against righties, .244. Could be interesting.
The only thing is
what do you think about him in terms of, you talk about the clubhouse dynamics? What do you think about Cody Bellinger as a human being? You pro Cody? I don't know enough to say.
I don't know anything about that.
He's got that pedigree, though. I mean, he's another guy, from a young age was propped up. Like, you're the man, you're the next guy.
He's also a baseball lifer. His dad played in the majors, right? Yeah. I mean, so like there's that aspect to it. Like, So I think that probably from that perspective, he probably would fit into the clubhouse dynamic. The one thing I've been a little bit concerned with him this year, like obviously he had a nice resurgence last year with the Cubs. He hit 307, had 26 home runs, right? 881 OPS. Those numbers are back down again as expected. But it's not like he's been terrible. He's hitting 274. His OPS is 760, but he's only got 9 home runs. He's not really hitting the ball hard. And then if you look at his batted ball profile on StatCast, you see that he's got a lot of blue.
What was interesting the other night was, I think it was his first at bat against Mercado. You look at it in real time, and you're like, he piped that ball. Like,
he did.
That ball is going to be out of Wrigley Field. And it hangs up, and Castellanos goes and runs it down. And you're like, that was weird. And I know he got him later.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that was a strange sequence, because I don't know that he could really square one up a whole lot better than that.
His barrel percentage is 6.4 this year, 34th percentile.
Here's the thing: presumably you're not giving up much to get him. I mean, he's making $27.5 million this season. So this is the other part of it too, where I'm like, I don't have to pay this. I'm gonna have to pay him.
Yeah, but I think it's only what's his contract? Doesn't he have if I remember, and I didn't look it up, so I could be talking out my ass here. But if I remember correctly, wasn't it a 1 year? It's a 1 year deal with a club option for next year.
Yes, he's got a 2-year option after this. There's an opt out after this season. I don't know if it's club or player though.
Okay, that's the thing. Okay, all right. I knew that there was something weird with his contract.
Certainly, we can look that up. He signed a 3-year, $80 million contract with the Cubs, including $80 million guaranteed. So yeah, I mean, it must be player.
Oh, okay. So that's a player option. Oh, well, that changes things. I thought it was a club option situation.
Yeah.
Because if you're a player and you're making that and you have that money guaranteed and then you get traded to the Phillies, why the hell would you opt out? You wouldn't opt out.
So he is set to earn $30 million. This is per sources. This wasn't the finalized one, but I don't want to spend too much time on Cody Bellinger's contract. Approximately $30 million in 24, followed by $30 million in 25 if he doesn't opt out, and $20 million in 26 if he doesn't opt out after the second season. Now I'm out on that contract. I'm good. I don't need that.
Yeah, it's not. That's not good. That's not. You don't want player option situation there. It doesn't give you the.
No, I don't want to be tied into anyone else that.
Nope. No. Yeah, scrap it.
All right. Well, look, here's what I would like to get to now. You turn the page and you're looking at a really interesting series against the Atlanta Braves. And let me just set the stage here, because when Schwarber and Harper go down and we had that night of anxiety of what does this look like? Are these guys out for 2 months? Are they out for 10 days? What's going to happen here? The immediate thought becomes, here's the chance for the Braves. Even if they're only on the IL for 10 days, the door is now open for Atlanta, because they have the Pirates at home. They have the Giants at home. Like, they have an opportunity to make their move here. And the Braves now have lost 3 of their last 4 games, and they have 5 straight games in which they've scored 3 runs or fewer. They've scored 3 runs or fewer in 7 of their last 8 games. They're not hitting. They just lost 2 out of 3 to the Giants. They have not taken advantage of the opportunity. And instead of coming into this series with a chance to cut it down from, let's say, 6 or 7 games to 4 with a sweep, the best they can do by Sunday night is be 6 back of the Phillies. Mm-hmm. They are basically in a situation, again, I'm not saying that if teams have overcome larger deficits later in the season, but Phillies just survived the weekend here, get one. They're still looking up at an 8-game lead on Monday morning. Like, the Phillies have to just find a way to get one down there. And if they can win the series, I cannot imagine a world in which the Phillies win this series and they haven't essentially knocked out the Braves.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll tell you that the game that to me is the one that sticks out that you got to win is tomorrow, Saturday.
Go ahead, but I'm gonna tell you why I hate this. Go ahead.
I mean, it's the best pitching matchup, right? I mean, so you got a good matchup. Can you win tonight, Nola and Fried? You can, but I mean, you got to understand that's the best pitcher that you're going to face in the 3 pitchers you're going to see. And it's you're facing a lefty, so you don't have You're going to put all the bench guys in the lineup, right? So this is a tougher matchup tonight. If Nola goes out and pitches really well, then yeah, sure, you can pull this one out, and I'm all in favor of that. But I think that if you look at matchup wise, the one that matches up the where you have the best matchup is you have Suarez going against Schwellenbach on Saturday. I think that's the one that you look at because you worry about Mercado pitching against Atlanta, right? And I know Lopez is kind of tired, but he's been great for them this year. So you have a little bit of worry there. You have a little bit of worry about the offense in tonight's game. I think that the best matchup for a win in any of the 3 games is Saturday.
Yeah. Well, one thing about Ronaldo Lopez real quick here, and, I think you referenced it earlier in the show, but Mark Bowman, who writes for MLB.com, he's the Braves writer, kind of the equivalent to Todd Zalecki here. He has not gotten deep into games here lately. So like his last 3 starts, he pitched against the Tigers, who can't hit, but 5 innings, 7 hits allowed, no earned runs, but he only went 5 innings. His next start against the Cardinals, 5 innings, 2 earned runs. His last start against the Giants, 4 1/3, 2 earned runs. I mean, he's thrown a total of 14 1/3 over his last 3 games. There is concern with him that he is on the brink of being burnt out. As good as he's been, I mean, he's been a godsend for the Braves this year. If he's come out of nowhere, and if he hadn't had the start that he had, who knows where the Braves would be right now?
Right.
So he's an important piece, but there's an idea, and this is what Bowman heard. He said, I think that he should not start Sunday. You don't chase the division title, protect your player. So if nothing else, it would seem that the Phillies are coming into a situation where he's on fumes, and it should be somewhat advantageous in that way. Now, I can't tell you Michael Mercado in a second career Major League start is a better option. So the Braves are going to be favored in that game. They're at home. Phillies are banged up. Like, they'll be favored. They're favored tonight. Phillies should be favored Suarez, Schwellenbach. So I agree with you that if the idea is like go down there and just win 1, then Saturday is your best opportunity to do it. But I'll turn this back, and like my sports talk radio, my 38 years of listening to sports talk radio is going to seep out of me here. And I'm going to, what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron Nola, go win a game tonight. Don't go toe to toe with Fried for 5 innings. And in the 6th, give up a home run. And then we come on Monday and we're like, he went 6 innings and he only gave up 1 hit for 5 innings, but he just couldn't get the curveball down in a big spot in the 6th, and the Phillies lose 3-2. Go win the fucking game tonight. How about that?
Love it.
I know at least I'm self-aware enough to be like, here's the WIP seeping out of me.
I love when you get like this. It's the best.
But like, come on.
You're not wrong.
Okay.
They're probably going to need, and look, you never know. Maybe they hit Fried. They've hit Fried.
It's the detail that I gave. It's not just for win a game, but it's the 6th inning. And
I got the detail. They've hit Fried in the past, so maybe they go out and surprise both of us, right? And they hit this guy, and Nola doesn't have to give you that game where he has to shove, right, and win a game. But I tend to think it's a pitcher's duel, like you. And yes, you're right. Aaron Nola, step up, get the game, get the win for the Phillies. It'd be great. Give them
and then Saturday afternoon, Ranger bounce back after that last start against the Marlins, win the series, and knock this team out.
Yes. Yeah, I'm on board with everything that you're saying.
It's hard to do it, though. It is hard to do it. I mean, that's what when you're going into a series and you feel good, you're able to overlook the deficiencies and stuff. The reality of it is the Phillies are going into a series against the Braves, who should be amped up. Like, they know that their season, if they have any designs of winning this season, another division title, they've got to go this weekend. Like, if this was a Braves podcast, we'd say it's time. They don't have Harper. They don't have Schwarber. They don't have Real Muto. We have the pitching advantage in 2 of these 3 games. We're at home. We owe them one from 23. We owe them another one from 22. Like, let's go. So that's their viewpoint. The reality is the Phillies probably, if you put a gun to my head and said what happens this week, I'd say they lose 2 out of 3. But the greedy part of you says, like, here's the path to winning the series. Go do it. And that's where I kind of am at 9 o'clock on a Friday morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, by the way, Bob, holiday weekend, and we knew we had to record. Obviously, we had to record. But we could have started later, I'm off today. I could have. Normally, we have to record early in the morning because of my work schedule. It's like, we still got up and did this early.
Yeah. Yeah, you wanna open up a Patreon and have people submit donations because we recorded at 8:45 on a Friday morning?
We got up early to do it. We actually started it like it was 8:20. I think it was. We started.
Well, guess what? If you're listening to this right now, so we kind of allude to our work here and there, and you're like, oh, Crossing Broad, cool. Like, well, there's a company that owns Crossing Broad called XL Media, and I'm the vice president of sports betting for that company. And that's really my actual job, which is why you don't see a lot of Philly stuff from me on Crossing Broad these days. But I went out because I was bored with my 2 kids and 55-hour, 60-hour a week job. I went out and got a real estate license in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
So have a listing up in Mullica Hill right now that we're working on. And this is not an advertisement, but I am laying the foundation that I am going to start advertising for that real estate entity in the near future. So our first sponsor of this show is going to be me. And I am not paying you to do that read. So
no, but
nah.
I will.
If I sell a house off of it, if someone says like, God, I love your podcast, like I'll buy a house with you, then maybe I'll we'll talk. I'll buy you dinner. No, actually, I think that's illegal. I can't even do that. But
no, you can't.
Yeah, no, it should be interesting. Look, here's what I want to know. Did Cristopher Sanchez, and I wanted to have this conversation as we were talking about his struggle, did Cristopher Sanchez cost himself a spot in the All-Star game yesterday?
Well, it's worth it. We should talk about the All-Star game too, because obviously they got 3 starters.
Alec Bohm, if you would have told me in the beginning of the season that Alec Bohm was going to be the starting third baseman in the National League, I would have said, holy shit.
When we did the All-Star predictions at the beginning of the year, it wasn't even on our
neither of us mentioned that one.
Nope.
No.
Wasn't even a thought. Wasn't even like, maybe you have not like a reserve, nothing. We didn't even talk about it. So good on Alec Bohm. Congrats to him. Trey Turner deserves it, even though he missed 6 weeks. He probably wouldn't have beaten Mookie Betts if Mookie didn't get hurt, but I still think Turner,
do you think he was the right choice
as opposed to Dela Cruz or Adames or O'Neal Cruz? Like, who else you putting in? Like, yes, yeah. Trey Turner, even though he's missed 6 weeks, has been sensational in the time that he's played. He missed 38 games, but he played in 51, 52. He's been really, really good. So, he deserves to be there.
I saw some Mets fans yesterday bitching about Lindor, saying that Lindor deserved it over Turner.
Yeah, Lindor's gotten hot. He's played better, but in the first 2 months of the season, he was shit.
Yeah,
he didn't start getting good till they started leading him off, which was right before London.
How about the Mets this week too? How about the Mets with Washington this week? They have 2 crazy extra inning wins, like where nobody hit for 9 innings. They get into extras and they just go nuts. I think they scored like 4 and 5 runs in extra innings,
and then blew a 5-0 lead.
Then they blow a 5-0 lead. You're like, here come the Mets, and then they blow a 5-0 lead, and then yesterday they lose 1-0.
Yeah.
It was a solo homer in the 8th for the Nationals, and I mean the game was over in 4 minutes. I think the Mets spent like 11 total minutes hitting yesterday. The innings were just like blink and it was over.
Yeah.
They
are the epitome of a 500 team.
Yeah.
That's exactly what a 500 team is supposed to be.
So on the Phillies, though, Bohm, Turner, Harper.
Yeah.
Those are your 3 guys offensively. 3 of your 4 infielders. Great. What happens on the pitching side here? How are they going to do this?
Wheeler and Suarez, I think, go. And then this is why I think Sanchez, I think what you were suggesting is accurate. I thought he was, in all honesty, even before yesterday, I thought he was a bubble. I know he was pitcher of the month of June in the National League, and that's great, and he deserved it. He was the best pitcher in the National League in the month of June. But I still felt like he was on the bubble of being added to this all-star team. Not only that, I'm sure that there's some internal concern of having too many pitchers be named the All-Star. It's why the league picks the pitchers and not the fans. Because if fans could vote for pitchers, like a team could have their entire staff end up going out there, and then that sucks, right? And then you're like, oh, shit, our guys are supposed to be getting 3 days off, and now they're pitching, right? So I think that there is some internal conversation with that stuff. So I think Suarez and Wheeler are definitely going to be there. I think Sanchez probably, with the loss yesterday, misses. because now they announced the team on Sunday, right? So he's not going to have another start before then. And I think it was just bad enough of a start to drop him out of the, could I see him as a potential, hey,
he's sixth in the National League of starters in ERA now. And had that starting goal, well, I mean, he could have possibly been third.
Can I see him getting added, like one of those, this guy can't go because he's hurt or whatever, and we need to add somebody. Add Cristopher Sanchez. Yeah, I think that's a possibility. As for the bullpen guys, I think Matt Strom's pitched himself out of it.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So I have and this is where I was going. I have a side-by-side right now of Jeff Hoffman and Matt Strom. And there was a time maybe 3 weeks ago where I said that maybe both go.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just because we're hyper-focused on the Phillies. I do think it's maybe somewhat unrealistic in the modern age to send two. I know that both of them have closed. Hoffman has closed especially, but like two bullpen guys from the same team that aren't like big-time pedigree guys, that's probably a stretch. So to me, it's one or the other. Do you still feel that one gets in?
No.
You think both are out?
Yes.
And Strom to you would have been the guy, but now has pitched himself out.
Yes.
Okay.
I know Hoffman's gotten some saves and stuff, and his numbers are probably a little bit, maybe even a little bit better than Strom at this point. But I felt like what Strom did, that stretch that he had, where he gave up runs on opening day and then nothing for 2 months, was something that does not happen in baseball. And if he was able to, even though he gave up a run, gave up that home run, if he was able to like recalibrate after that and get back to being shut down, and that was it, like that was his only blemish, I think it would have been impossible to ignore. But the fact that he's been a little bit leaky in his last couple of outings.
I mean, his last 3 outings, he obviously struggled on last Thursday against the Marlins. A third of an inning, the 2 earned runs, kind of was out there and blew that game. I mean, he's charged with a blown save. Then he comes back Saturday. He gives up the key hit. He's not charged with a run there, but, he's on the mound when it happens. And then against the Cubs the other night, he gives up another run. And look, like that's going to happen. Like we're kind of picking this apart, but you had to be otherworldly, I think, going into this selection process to make the All-Star. I mean, this isn't a larger conversation about Matt Strom. Like, I don't need to have that yet. If he has another 4 appearances where this continues, then you say, like, hey, did they burn him out? What do they need to do to fix this? How do they play it? We can have that conversation 2 weeks from now. But right now, it's just about the All-Star game, and I do think that these last few appearances may have done it. Now, you're out on Jeff Hoffman, which next time we have him on our podcast, I'm going to let him know that you don't think he deserves to be an all-star.
This is afterwards. The other day, I got to tell you, the last game we were at, we were trading more TV shows to watch. Like, because I watched that show that he suggested to us, Defending Jacob on Apple Plus. It was awesome, by the way, which, by the way, came out in 2020. And it was just kind of sitting there. Nobody watched it. And now all of a sudden, it's like one of the most watched thing. Like, people must have found it. And
with your guy Glenn Mack now retiring, perhaps you can become the Philadelphia market TV.
So I recommended a new one to him, and he was like, "Yeah, man, I'm gonna check it out." So like we were talking about that. Now you're gonna ruin.
You guys are gonna be texting each other while you're simultaneously watching season 3 of The Bear.
There you go.
Carmi, I just wish Carmi would just be a little bit more open.
And the funny thing is I haven't even started. I love The Bear, and I haven't even started that season.
I'm actually rewatching the first 2 seasons ahead of watching the 3rd season. So I'm actually at the end of season 1, and it's. I actually recommend, if you love The Bear, go back and watch the first 2 seasons again, because you're going to pick up on things like you would with any show. But you just pick up on these things, and you kind of appreciate the nuance of it a little bit more. But we digress. No, Jeff Hoffman, though. I mean, look. I don't know. I get it. I see where you're at, but like he has a .908 whip. He's striking out 11.4 batters per 9. Like his ERA 1.24. Like he's been really, really good. I guess this comes down to just you need to mix things up and get other players involved across the league. Does he not stack up? How do you view it?
I think that there are a number of relievers who around the game who have similar numbers, and it just gets to again. It becomes a numbers game thing, right? The Phillies are already going to have 5 All-Stars. Like you have to have at least somebody from every team. you look at it and say, are we really going to take the setup guy in Philly as a sixth all-star when a team that sucks like the Rockies needs a player, or a team that, whatever, whoever it might be,
Right.
needs. But if you look around, there are guys having really good years in bullpens all around baseball. It's just hitting is down and pitching is up, right? So you're going to find that. And I think that you'll find that there's enough guys out there with similar numbers that you can justify keeping both of them home.
Yeah, that's probably.
And it's not a knock on Hoffman or a knock on Strom. It's just that it's, that's the way of the All-Star game.
Yeah, in that situation, you're going to need a little bit of a story behind you, I think, to help push it over the top. And so if Matt Strom comes in and hadn't given up a run all of April, May, June, and the first 10 days of July, that's a story.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a story.
Correct.
So I agree with you on that, actually. So just to clarify then, you've got Suarez, you've got Wheeler, you've got the three that are starting in the infield. So you got 5 Phillies going to the All-Star game then.
Yeah, I don't think anybody else is going to go.
I
thought Real Muto had a shot to be the backup.
Yeah, I did too, but obviously with
him being hurt, it can't happen.
Real quick, just a injury update here, and then we will go to one last thing. So Kyle Schwarber, do we see him on July 9th against the Los Angeles Dodgers?
Yes.
Bryce Harper, do we see him on July 9th against the Los Angeles Dodgers?
No.
Do we see Bryce Harper on July 11th in the finale against the Los Angeles Dodgers?
I'm still going to say no.
Do we see him on July 12th in the first series against the Oakland Athletics?
Yes. I think we're going to see him against the A's, whether it's the 12th or the 13th. I think we're going to see him get a couple games in against the A's.
So he's playing in the All-Star game then?
Yes.
Yeah. I think it was Jesse Rogers. Don't want to misattribute this, but kind of almost a throwaway line in the story. It was like Bryce Harper is expected to play in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Which I saw that yesterday morning. I had not previously read that there was we all have that feeling, but I had not seen anyone go so far as to write that.
So I think we'll get a couple games from him against Oakland.
Okay.
Might be one of those play Friday.
Did you see what the Diamondbacks did to the Dodgers this week?
Yeah. It's like there's a lot. It's baseball.
That Diamondbacks team, I think we might be in a situation where the beginning of October, this team's in the field again. Jesus. They're this, they might be that team, man, where they're just there again somehow. And you're like, this team sucks.
Well, right now, they're in the last wild card spot. They're under 500, which is a disaster in the National League right now. That the wild card team's sub 500. But there's so many teams. Look, my one last thing gets to another team that I wanted to talk about. I think,
but the Dodgers, they clip them on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
But then they come back. Arizona comes back 12-4 on Wednesday and 9-3 last night. The Dodgers are a weird team. You just I know Betts is out, but that pitching is just
it's not good enough, and their lineup dies after 5.
They're overvalued the Cowboys are. If you watch, if you look every night at the odds and everything, you'll see the Dodgers are minus 200 favorite, which if you don't know anything about betting on baseball, that's a substantial favorite.
Yeah.
And you're why? Why am I they're good, but why am I paying that premium for the Dodgers? They're just not that good and they're not that dependable.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, one last thing. So this actually took me back a year that it happened yesterday. But if you do remember last year when Matt Strom and Cutter Crawford got suspended and fined or got thrown out of the game and fined for the standoff, at the national anthem at Citizens Bank Park because they wouldn't leave. And it was awesome. It was fun. It was great. Well, it happened again yesterday on the 4th of July between the Yankees and the Cincinnati Reds. And the Reds won the standoff. Now, we'll see. It'd be interesting to see.
They also won the series, too. That Yankees team, they stink. They stink. They can't get
that. That's what I'm going to get to. But first, I wanted to kind of make it a two-part thing. So it was Graham Ashcraft who wins the standoff with the Yankees. I guess the Yankees pitchers were Ian Hamilton and Cody Poteet. Ashcraft wins a standoff, gets really pumped after that. Reds go out and pummel the Yankees and end up sweeping them. First of all, What's your thought on the standoff? And then let's talk about the Reds and the Yankees, because I think that the Reds are finally starting to look like the team that I think we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. And I think ultimately they may be a playoff team. And then where are we at? And we know we talked about the Yankees last week, or last time we talked. I think that they're starting to slide back. And I think we're starting to see that there are warts on that team after all.
I love the standoff. Ashcraft had thrown already in that series, so it doesn't matter to them.
Right.
See you later. It's just fun. I think that's fun. Like, you search right now Yankees on Google, and it's all over the place. Like, all the outlets covered. It's good for the game. Grow the game.
Yeah.
Very memeable content, we'll say.
Yes.
The Yankees can't hit. And I actually don't know why any team playing the Yankees right now doesn't say, hey, Juan Soto, take your base. Hey, Aaron Judge, take your base. We'll deal with any of the other 7 hitters. I don't know what I'm missing, but there's this like national love affair with Anthony Volpe and like how he's the next Jeter. And he too can't hit. Like, he's a very streaky player. I believe he's hitting about 250 right now. And he's had stretches this season. I almost equate him a little bit to, I don't want to say he can't hit. That's too far. But he's almost having like a Bryson Stott-like season where you're like, I would say they're very similar. This is a guy I like. I think he's a guy. I think he's a clutch player. I think he could be a dude that's here for 12 years. Here he comes. He's making strides. And then, all right, well, that they're having very similar years. And I know from a national perspective, Volpe has the higher ceiling. He was more touted prospect, all that. But they're kind of the same guy in this moment. The rest of that lineup just is just horrendous.
Yeah.
There's a story
I give Torres credit. He's kind of bounced back a little bit.
He's been okay. There's a story today on NJ.com. Judge's personal hitting coach is fed up with the Yankees' lack of offense. And there's a quote in here. They've lost 13 out of 18 while he's hitting like an MVP. Judge's personal hitting coach, Richard Shank, wrote during the July 4th game, an eventual 8-4 loss. The Yankees' offensive player development is terrible, he said. Shank was responding to a Yes Network tweet of a graphic and announcer Michael Kay's analysis that explained Judge's statistics and wins and losses. He hits, they win. That's simple.
Their team OPS is 758, and that's because of Judge and Soto. Let's be honest, like they're 758. It's being hidden. Here are your regular players. Jose Trevino's OPS is 693. Rizzo's on the 60-day IL now, but he was at 630. Torres better lately, but 638. Volpe 687. Oswaldo Cabrera 614. Alex Verdugo's 703. Like, so
Verdugo got off to a pretty good start, and he's really cool.
So the rest of my point is that their team OPS, and then even if you look at guys like who play somewhat, Austin Wells 670, DJ LeMahieu 485, Trent Grisham 652. They're all under. The only guys over are Judge and Soto.
Yeah.
The rest of the lineup stinks. It's terrible.
Yesterday was the first time that the Yankees had been swept at home in an interleague series ever. How about that?
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Why do I remember the first time the Phillies
three-game interleague series at home?
Okay.
So
because I remember there was a time that they played at Yankee Stadium. The Phillies were not good and the Yankees were. I think it was the very first time that they played at Yankee Stadium. And that there was, I remember
probably maybe they split it. It was a 2-2 type deal.
No, but the Phillies had back-to-back incredible starts. Mike Grace almost threw a no-hitter.
Oh, God.
Right? And then
we're talking like 96. Like, what is that?
Yeah, somewhere in that range.
Late
and then
90s.
There were 2 consecutive starts that were like off the charts awesome by the Phillies. I could have sworn they were.
Yeah, I'm looking at it here. The sweep against the Reds also represented an unfortunate nugget in Yankees history as New York was swept in a 3-game series at home for the first time since interleague play began in 1997.
97. So that's the year it would have been. I'm actually going to look up Mike Grace now because I'll find that series. Man, that's crazy. Like I could have sworn that there was a Philly sweep of that Yankees team that was really not deserving, if I remembered correctly. So let's go 97. That's when interleague play began, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Mike Grace's game logs against it was not at Yankee Stadium. It was in Philly. That's why.
There you go.
Yeah, it was the Philly. Complete game, 3-hit shutout.
What a weird thing to remember. Like, I remember Hideo Nomo coming to the vet, and Greg Jeffries went off, and they won like 17-4. And that was at like the height of like Nomo's like the hysteria when he would pitch. Like, I remember that. I don't remember Mike Grace.
Yeah. So Mike Grace had a complete game, 3-hit shutout against the Yankees in 97. Tuesday, September 2nd, as a matter of fact. By the way, 2-hour and 22-minute game for what it's worth.
1997. That would be like an hour and 10 minutes today. The Yankees, by the way, have lost 13 of their last 17. They're now 2 games behind the Orioles, who had a nice week. They won 2 out of 3 against the Mariners in Seattle.
Yeah, and so the rest of that series, the Phillies swept them. The game before that, on September 1st, was a Kurt Schilling gem, and I believe that was a 16 strikeout game, if I want to say. Let me look it up. Kurt Schilling. 8 innings, 1 run, 16 strikeouts in that game.
And this is crazy, too, because the Phillies won 68 games that year, and the Yankees won 96 games.
Yes, he struck out Jeter 4 times in that game.
Crazy.
Yeah. And then they swept them. The final game was in a walk-off on the 3rd. They won that game 5-4. The Phillies went into that series 50-82. That was the record. Okay.
Do we think that was some foreshadowing of Terry Francona owning the Yankees?
And the walk-off in that was bottom of the 9th. You ready for this one?
A walk-off
walk. So the best part about it was, so you got Mickey Morandini led off with a single. And then there was a force out. So Greg Jeffries is on. Single by Scott Rowland. Single by Rico Bronya to load the bases. Lieberthal strikes out. So now you have 2 outs, bases loaded for Tony Barron.
Oh, God.
And Tony Barron draws a walk. Jeffrey scores. Phillies sweep the Yankees.
There you go. When you do your 1997 Phillies piece for Crossing Broad, you can talk about how all the players contributed, even Tony Barron. All right. Well, I did not know that we were going to have that reference in today's show.
That came out of nowhere.
We got there. Okay.
But the Reds, by the way, man, I'm telling you, I think that's the team that's going to.
I mean, now that this has validated my Reds preseason playoff pick.
I think that's that. We're just trying to support our.
They're off the mat now.
Picks.
Go Reds! Look at them.
Yeah.
All right. Who do the Yankees have next? Where do they turn from here?
That's a good question.
Let's see. I got it right in front of me.
Do you?
They have the Red Sox.
Oh,
that's fun.
Yeah, Red Sox. They're an interesting team, man. They're an interesting team. So,
all right. Well,
we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Yeah, let's put it this way: Red Sox have won 4 in a row. Yankees have lost 3 in a row. The Red Sox keep this up, and the Yankees continue to falter. Can the Red Sox catch them?
You know what? Maybe the Yankees lose every game in the month of July, and they're trading Juan Soto at the deadline. How's that sound?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see. I don't want to dismiss your question. I think I don't like the Yankees. I don't believe in them. So I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting.
Right. Well, for Anthony Sanfilippo and Bob Wankel, you can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, anywhere that you get your shows, Amazon Music, all that good stuff. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. And we will talk to you on Monday of next week. See you later.